All right, good evening, everyone. This is the calling the Finance Administration meeting to order. My name is Jim Spear, Mike Salmonson, Michael Gardini, Manager Matt West. And let's start out with the Treasurer's Report. Mr. West.
You want to approve your minutes?
Oh yeah. Approval of minutes. Did everyone get a chance to check out the minutes that Michael circulated?
Yes. I will move to approve the minutes of the April 12, 2024 Finance and Administration Subcommittee.
I will second that. All in favor of accepting the minutes? All against? No against? Minutes pass.
Great.
Now we get to the
Now on to the Treasurer's Report. The Treasurer's Report was included in tonight's meeting packet, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee has.
Everyone look this over.
Yeah, I just have one question, and I
Yeah.
pulled out the wrong paper, so. Give me one sec. I'm sorry. There was something on the, oh, I know what it was. On the accounts receivable, there's a big receivable on the Sabine
Like
rent.
the lease receivable?
Yeah.
I don't-
And I just didn't know whether that's like anticipated rents or somebody's, I just want to make sure somebody's not behind and we need to.
No, nobody's
Okay.
behind. That's an accounting thing. And
Okay.
I believe that that's left over from 2023, us not booking, reversing entries that are made. I think it's, so I would not get too
Okay.
comfortable with these numbers. The
It just seemed
assets,
odd.
the assets, like the first section, yes. That lease receivable, it's inflating your numbers. It's not that you're owed all of that money.
Okay.
That's not what that's showing us.
Okay, that was my only question.
Yep.
So I thought that's a lot of money
Yes.
for somebody not to be paid.
Okay, any other questions on the Treasurer's Report? No. Excellent. Audit update.
This is going to be really quick also. That should be 2023 annual DCED
Okay.
audit update, not 2024. We are, our CPA that council thankfully approved in the budget to help us navigate through the 2023 financial audit. He has been here once, working through some things. Things are looking in pretty good shape. I was working on some things that I needed to do today. The representative from the auditor was here also for a day just to get familiar with the books. Since we had a significant staff turnover last year, everyone who is involved at the staff level for the audit wasn't here in 2023 with the exception of Alan. And so it's going to take us a little longer than usual to get 2023 in the books. But we're getting close to having the auditors on site and looking forward to getting it moving.
Is there an anticipated, when will there be like a public?
I'm not even going to venture a guess. So DCED always says by the end of April, every municipality is supposed to have your audit done.
Oh,
I have never seen any municipality ever hit that goal. So we always try to get close to it. I'm hoping that it doesn't go, I'll know more once the auditor has a chance to start working on it to see where we're at. Once the auditor is here, they're usually on site for a couple of days, plugging and chugging, asking for backup documents. Once they're here, see how that goes. I should have a better understanding of it. Once they get everything that they need, once they conclude their site visit, then it takes a couple of weeks for them to compile it into the written audit. My goal is to have the auditor present the 2023 audit to council at that time as well.
okay. Sounds good. Would we come through here first or go straight to?
It would, I'm not sure if there would be a benefit of it going here and then to council unless you would like, I'm thinking on the fly, given that Finance and Administration Committee meeting is the same night as council, maybe we could have the auditors here to answer any questions and then present it to council. Because it's, I'm a numbers kind of guy, but that presentation is pretty boring. It's pretty dry.
Yeah.
But I think it would be a good idea to have the auditor here and to answer any questions you might have for that process. Just trying to be efficient with everybody's time. I don't think there's a need to have her give the presentation to
Twice.
this group and then council.
Makes sense.
Does. Okay, sounds good. Scheduled bills.
Something there that I saw.
Any questions about any of the bills? Which is the same schedule of bills that are on this evening's business meeting agenda.
So I'll move to recommend the schedule of bills for the general sewer, solid waste, capital, highway, aid, and green funds totaling $271,572.65.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Yep, okay, great, none against. Thank you. And, I'm gonna get back to my minutes thing, it's not as easy as it looks. Okay. We are at, wait a minute,
Budget amendment.
budget amendment number 1. Wait, am I on the, sorry. Budget amendment number 1.
All right, so thank you. I included an action item request document in the meeting packet which explains what we're doing. This is just some housekeeping. It's just good practice for us since when you develop a budget, it's the best budget with what you know at that time. From an accounting standpoint, if anything major changes within the year, you want to do a budget amendment so it doesn't create problems for that audit. Given that my situation changed right around the same time the budget was done, my recommendation was to not do a budget amendment at that time. There was too many moving parts at that time, and then it would come out in the wash, we would do it later. So we're at that point where it's later. And if you've been noticing on the schedule, or the budget versus actual, there's been 2 line items under administration that haven't had a budgeted amount. That's what this is, right? We're adding a budgeted amount to that. We have it set up in the accounting system to account for it correctly. And the major changes are having to do with salary, auto allowance, and deferred compensation, which were all contractual. And so I also looked at the volunteer service tax credit that we issue for any firefighters or EMS volunteers that live in the borough. We've already processed 100% of those for all of the eligible participants for this year. I over budgeted for it significantly. I budgeted $26,000 and the real number was just under $18,600. Also,
Yeah, the last item is what got me.
the last one with under revenues or expenses?
No, the professional services.
Professional services. So if you remember in the budget, I included the professional services to include management services and CPA. Given that I am here, there is no need for that management services anymore. So I backed those numbers out. I started looking at what we've been doing this year, started backing some of the other numbers out. The grants administration, we're not at a point right now where we need help with a grants administrator to find new grants, okay? That's coming. We're managing the existing grants right now. So I backed that out to half of it, since we're almost at the halfway mark.
I thought we only approved the half year for that position. I thought it was going to
That's not
start
business.
July 1st anyway.
No, this is not a position. This is under professional services. So professional
Right.
services, that 46,000
Right.
included CPA for our audit, a grants administrator,
Right,
help
that's what I
with
mean.
us, and management.
Right.
So I backed out management, half of the grants administrator, and kept CPA. The position you're talking about is baked into the salary full-time administration for
Okay.
half year. That's an additional full-time equivalent
Okay.
that we'll be hopefully hiring come July.
Okay. Am I wrong that part of that position is to honor grants? I thought that was,
Mhm.
no? Okay.
It's going to be a
not part of
shared
the job
position with
description.
the police department.
Right. Okay.
Not saying that that person's
Right.
never going to do that, but
Right. Okay.
you know, not off the bat. And then I also found under the revenues I don't know where that 2024 budget number came from. That was, must be I fat fingered it. Really, it was these, payroll, employee health care contributions. Employees pay 5% of the premium if they are enrolled in health care. What we have collected right now, that 10,700 is a more realistic number than the 23,342. So all said and done, this is a zero total net change. Everything washes out. So it's a no-cost change order, which will help us put it into the budget, which will help then the 2024 audit.
Yep.
Cool.
Pretty good. Okay.
And you're going to see, I've got at least one more that I've been working on, and that has to do with our debt service. One thing I didn't catch during the budget, that 2 of the debt line items are mislabeled, and so I need to create 2 new accounts for those, since they were 2 new bonds that were issued. The numbers are right, we just need to relabel them. So that will be coming also. That'll also be a no cost, that'll just be a name change.
Great.
And if this committee recommends, I figured we would put it on the agenda for the June council meeting, just so it's not right tonight,
Yep.
So we can put it in the meeting packet and I can answer questions from council.
Okay. Do we need to vote on this?
Yes, please, vote for a recommendation to approve it and move it to council.
Okay, so I'll make a motion.
Sure, I will move to make a recommendation to approve the 2024 budget amendment number 1.
Second.
All in favor? This passes.
Thank you.
There's no amendment number 2, right?
Not yet,
Okay.
this is the first one.
As the year goes
We're
on.
good. Oh, I see, the 2, okay. All right. CIP, capital improvement plan.
So unfortunately, I've been distracted by a couple of other things this past month. And I'm not meaning to make excuses for it, but I really like the idea, I believe, Mike, you came up with, setting up one-on-ones or small groups with council members to talk about the CIP. So I'm hoping to do that. Got it on my task list for tomorrow. We'll see how late tonight goes. If not early next week, I'll look for an email from me, just to set up a time to come in and we can talk CIP, get everybody on the same page. There's a couple of other things that I've discovered that I'd like to add to the CIP. It's in my manager's report that I completed today and added to the meeting packet. So if you haven't seen it, check that out. It's been a marathon week. AC units over at 80 Windsor. The one on the west wing, the Girl Scout wing, has crapped out and we need to replace the condensing unit. The quote that we received was for both the condensing unit and the air handler. The air handler is in okay shape, so I've asked for an updated quote to just replace the condensing unit. And I believe that will be, I'm hoping to have it covered under our budgeted amount for maintenance for 80 Windsor. So I'm hoping that it will be come within budget. Why I bring that up, talking about capital improvement plan, is that I didn't know about that. That's a capital expense.
Yeah.
And as I was over there meeting with Ken Watson and the HVAC contractor, there sits 2 other air conditioning units that were installed at the same time, one for the library, one for the east wing. So
What year was that?
it was like 15 years ago.
Hmm.
So they're
Pretty
right at, they're Lennox, and he's just like, you've actually got like, he said they usually go 13 years. So you've actually gotten 2 years.
My Lennox went exactly 15 years.
So the one needs a new compressor.
Yeah.
And he's just like, look, we can replace the compressor, but all of the labor it's gonna take for us to do it, you'd be foolish to do that when all of the other things are gonna start failing, so you might as well just replace the entire thing.
It's probably the same guy who convinced me to replace it.
So,
It was the same advice. I mean, it was like, by the
Makes
time you
sense.
do it,
yeah.
eventually the rest of it's gonna go anyway, so there's really sort of
Yeah.
a point.
So those 3 air conditioning units are gonna be added to the capital
Okay.
improvement plan as well.
And how much are they apiece?
They're almost identical. One of them is a little larger, but the
Yeah.
other one is identical.
So are they like,
I'm gonna budget,
15K?
I'm gonna budget 15,000
Yeah, yeah.
just for,
yeah,
we got a quote for just over 13,000 to replace both the unit and the air handler. So which exceeds the budget limit, or the public bidding
Right.
requirements. So I'm asking to split it up, hopefully it gets us below the bidding requirements and within the range that I need to be an appropriate budgeted amount.
Okay.
Moving forward for 2025, you know, those other two units will need to be replaced sooner rather than later.
Or we could just make those little girls sweat.
We had that discussion too. Like, what if we don't replace it this year?
Yeah, no.
The, what's the, I assume the air handler is the same age?
It is, but they have fewer moving parts. And usually those things last, are twice as long, they'll last twice as long as your condensing unit.
Gotcha.
He said it's in good shape also. Because we maintain our AC units. We have a good maintenance contract.
Cool.
Great, okay, so,
So I don't have any other significant updates since last month.
yeah,
Unless anybody on the committee has questions about the capital improvement plan, I can answer them now. If not, look for that email from me.
I would say, we can meet, we don't have to meet individually, we can meet in
Small
of 2 or
groups,
3.
yeah.
yeah, that'd be nice, we should do that.
So the timing of it is that get all of council familiar with it, get feedback from council members of any other things, glaring omissions that we've missed, add them to it, come up with that finalized inventory, and then it becomes me putting those out for the 5 years and coming up with the financial ramifications of it. And how are we, remember it's not a funding document, how much is it going to cost us to fully fund the capital improvement plan over the 5 years? If we fully fund it, this is how much we're going to need. So I believe we're still on track for midsummer approval, adoption, consideration by council, which segues us right perfectly into budget season 2025, which I can't believe is a couple months away. It never ends.
All right, we'll move on to our ongoing discussion of rules of council, which today we had hoped to focus on council committees, Sunshine Act, and maybe a little bit how council committees operate in general.
Yeah, so this was something that I've been wondering about for a little bit in terms of, obviously, the committees are creatures of the council, right? And on council, there are Open Meetings Act rules and ethical rules about not deliberating outside of a public meeting, which means you can't have, a quorum talking about something outside of a posted meeting. And so the question in my mind was, well, the committees they're 3 people, how do they operate? Do they operate as a creature of the council? Do they operate as their own kind of deliberative bodies? And I think that one of the comments I think from the solicitor was, why don't you just tell me what you would like how you would like the committees to be able to operate, and then he'll give us advice on the best way to structure to achieve that goal. And he said, and now's a good time to get that sort of advice from him, because we're looking at the rules anyway, and we have these rules in there so we can amend them right now. We don't have to go through a kind of separate thing or figure that out separately. So that was kind of his, and it's, I don't want to say his recommendation, because it was kind of just a thought he was kind of thinking, it was a casual conversation. It wasn't like we sat down and had a meeting about it, right? But that was kind of his comment, and so I thought that would be, so I thought that while we're looking at this, it would be a good chance to kind of discuss that. the big thing that jumped out to me was that, you know, the committees, we focus in on issue areas, and so I thought it would be good to be able to actually speak with other members of committees about things, because theoretically, from a governance perspective, if you're, you know, if there's two other folks who are really focusing on a policy area with you, but then if we've structured things in a way where we can't actually talk to those folks because of, you know, we're doing things in a certain way where now they, you know, there's various different rules about, okay, make sure you don't talk to them, then what have we really accomplished, right? Then we've kind of taken our issue area experts and scattered them
Right.
and erected walls around them. So I think that would be one of the things that I would want to articulate just individually to Walco, to say, all of our, you know, meetings are going to be in these public meetings, continually operating them in full public view the way that we have, but also want to make sure that if we're talking about some sort of thing and we want to be able to, you know, call someone else who has issue area expertise on that, then we're not going to be accidentally tripping into some sort of weird legal area, just so that we make sure that everything is, you know, we're fully kosher with all of that.
I mean, we're already subject to Sunshine Act requirements in our subcommittee meetings anyway, right? In our committee meetings anyway, so if we want Cindy to come in because she has some specific expertise on how to spend money on police officers or something like that, none of the rules will change, right? I mean, if she shows up to talk to us and say, oh yeah, this is a really good way to...
Well, this is that's a slightly different question. This one's more about, you know, if I, you know, am working on something on my own and I want to bounce it off of you, but it's an issue area that covers things in a committee, am I allowed to
Right.
call you up and on the phone and talk about it type thing?
Yeah, I mean,
In the
we
spirit of
do that.
collaboration.
Don't
That's
we
what
do
I was,
that
that's what I was
already?
thinking, but, you
Like,
know,
on some of the...
Walco's comment was to let him think about, you know, how, I think my sense from him was like, it comes down to like, what are the committees?
Right.
And I had the sense that like, depending on how the committees are handled, you know, for all of us and for the public, there's still the committees, but like in the eyes of state law, they may become one thing or another thing just depending on the way we've structured what the committees are. And so that's why I just kind of was like, it's a highly technical thing and it really doesn't matter until the moment that it matters.
Right.
So I figured like while we're cleaning this up, we might as well like
Yeah.
have that
Yeah.
really straightforward and get like the answer
Right.
to that.
Yeah, okay.
So some of this might just be clarifying with the solicitor, maybe what we're doing already or something, you know.
Yeah, and that was, his
Maybe
comment
more
was like,
changes.
just tell me like what you guys want
Yeah.
the committees to be, and then he
Yeah.
will give us, you know, he'll say either you're doing it fine right now, or tweak it this way, or here are your options.
So should we like type up a brief description of the way we would like a committee to operate and then submit it to him? Is that how we would do it?
That's kind of, I was thinking, I don't know, do you have a?
How is that different than what we've been doing?
Yeah, I mean,
How
it's
is
like
it
when
different
I
than
called
what
you
is
just to...
On here, I'm pointing to the rules, the draft rules that are highlighted. How are we making more work for ourselves if it's more of a nuanced question? This situation, maybe it's just getting the solicitor to say, oh, that's an okay thing to do, or not.
Yeah, I didn't know that it has to be in the rules, right?
Well, maybe it does or maybe it doesn't. The question is like, right, there's a scenario where you know, oh, certain things constitute deliberation, now you've tripped into a different, like, and then if we've structured this in a certain way, where we're saying, oh, committees have power to do X, Y, Z, then maybe we're tripping various fault lines.
What if we described a bunch of hypothetical scenarios and presented them to John Walco and you could sort of check them off, say, that's good, that's good, that's good, or, you know.
Yeah, I think, I'm not thinking like get a brief from him or something, I think we just kind of, like, what I would say is like, let's just tell him like, hey, this is how we have always intended the committees to operate. Are there any, do you foresee any potential issues here? Or are we good and we can kind of carry on?
Could you do you have an example to help me like understand like the issue that you're,
Are you saying, yeah, is it like if it's somebody on the same committee, so like if I call you about something that we're gonna discuss in the committee, now we have a quorum of the committee?
I think one of the questions was like, if we are taking votes on like recommending an item to the broader council, then that vote constitutes deliberation.
Right.
And now we, like, can we actually talk to anyone else on the committee about that? So for instance, take the capital improvements plan. If that comes back before us to recommend that to council, does that constitute deliberation? Does that mean that even though we are on the finance and administration committee, I can't actually talk to
I see,
Mike
okay.
or Jim
Because
about
now,
that?
because it's a quorum of the
Oh,
committee.
Yeah.
Thank
That seems weird.
Sorry,
to
yeah,
me,
yeah, yeah.
But I guess it's technically right, like if I.
Like,
And I think Walco said basically, when I asked him this question, he said basically, oh, it depends. There are like, if you structure your committees in a certain way, then that may apply, and if you structure them in a different way, it may not. It just depends on what, like how the bodies are constituted and what sorts of.
My guess would be that if committees are set up to actually make decisions, then yes, that would apply, that you would be deliberating, you're not allowed to do that. These are merely recommendations, and the decision power comes to full council.
Yeah.
I'm not an attorney. I'm certainly going to.
I am, and I don't know the answer, so it's, I mean, as you were
Yeah.
saying it, I was like, no, it doesn't make sense. And I realized, well, wait a minute. If you're on the same committee and you were talking about some committee thing,
And
then
again,
you're a quorum of the committee.
Yeah.
and again, it's one of those
Yeah.
things where like,
Weird.
it kind of doesn't matter until it like.
Yeah, until
it's
somebody
each
complains.
thing, right?
Right, until somebody complains that
No,
the sun's right.
I would like that clarification
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
I think it's a good
That's good.
clarification here.
okay, should we like assemble a list of things like that?
That was the only,
Things.
well, yeah, I mean, if there's
know.
other like thing, that was the only big thing that jumped out where I was like, oh, we should probably have Walco
Yeah,
give us like, you know, a green light or a yellow light or whatever. There may be other things. I also asked him about the question about, you know, how a majority is constituted under. He basically said, you know, unless otherwise specified, it's always a majority of members at the meeting. It's not
Unless otherwise specified?
in state law.
Oh, it's state law, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we couldn't make another rule that superseded that?
Right. He said basically like you could have like, you could, I wouldn't do this because it would make it more complicated, but he said basically you could have kind of like a, hey, here's how we would want this to be done, and then it's more of a like a gentleman's agreement type thing, but it's not, it's not legally
Right.
enforceable.
Right. One question I had, I think somewhat related into the technology thing is, do we need a quorum in this room to run a committee meeting? Like, is there such a thing as a quorum of this committee, and do they need to be here?
That's my understanding.
All three of us need to be here?
A quorum, you
No,
need two.
quorum.
two of us can be here?
Two to begin
Well,
with.
so that was another thing where
Yeah.
Walco was like, it depends on what the body actually exists as.
Like if you are actually taking official action, I bet, my guess, knowing John,
Yeah.
he's saying it depends on the action that, what we're calling action.
Right.
Are you making a decision on something that's tangible?
Yeah.
If yes, then yes, it would apply. If no, if it's a recommendation, you could say, yeah, I move to recommend it. Okay, it's going to council.
Yeah, we're not spending money, we're not binding we don't have the power to bind the borough as a subcommittee. I mean, maybe we need to lay that out and say unless there's some delegated power to bind. I guess I could see a scenario where you say, you know, instead of you having authority to say, okay, for up to $15,000, somehow that got delegated to the committee, or the committee could.
That would be a decision-making power.
That would be a decision-making power, and then you do need, because we'd be binding folks. I could see that scenario, like that's a scenario I could foresee potentially.
So, just as a word of encouragement, we are not alone in committees. Every borough that I've known has committees, and they do this, they function this way. So, we can also learn from them. I did come from a municipality that didn't have committees. Many townships don't have committees. And that's a whole different scenario and a whole different way of operating. So I actually prefer the committee structure because it's a good way to organize thought and decision-making process. You know, it is a good way for this body to kind of be a sniff test. Does it pass the muster of this committee? If yes, okay, then let's bring it for showtime to all of council. If no, no, and that's more efficient from the council's perspective, and that, okay, it didn't pass a committee level. Not to say that an individual council member couldn't reintroduce it with the full body also. You always have that power to do that.
What's also just sufficient information,
Mhm.
like the public health and safety. Everybody doesn't have to hear all the details about the dangerous corner. Like we can filter that down to like you guys as a whole.
What about participating remotely, like in a committee? Like,
I think the
what
same rules would apply with quorum, that you would need two, at
you
least
need
two
two
people
in the
here.
room and
Mhm.
one person can participate remotely? Okay.
Duke it out.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I just think that it's going, that question would also be answered, because I know that Walco said that like he deals with municipalities where like their committees don't take action, and sometimes they have meetings that are like random spots, because they don't actually constitute a deliberative body. So like he's talked about things that run the gamut.
So we could clarify that too. I mean,
Yeah, and any meeting in which a vote is taken.
Yeah,
you need to
and
keep-
not that it just, and for, you know, the millions of people tuning in right now, there's like no changes planned to the way we run things,
Right.
more so just like making sure that we know where like any
Right.
potential trip lines are.
I'd be interested whether the same rules apply, because I know state law says that a business meeting or workshop meeting with full council needs to have a physical quorum.
Yeah,
Does a committee
Right. I mean, we could
need
make,
to have a core, a two-person
if
quorum?
we
physically
made the rule, nobody's gonna complain, right? The question is, if we don't have that rule, is that
Well,
okay?
we need to find out.
I'd rather have
So long
have
as the
it.
rule is compliant with.
Right,
Yeah,
Yes.
right, that's what I'm saying, is
all right.
you know that the rule of having at least two people in the room is gonna be compliant. The question is,
yeah.
do we want to make the possibility of only having one
We can-
person in the
yeah,
room
let's
and two people
clarify it. Let's put it
online?
on the pile
I'm
of
not
stuff
sure
to
that
have.
we want that, quite
Well,
frankly.
I mean, there could be you
Well,
know,
but-
what if only I can show up and you guys want to show up on the screens? You
Or
know?
what if we're back in COVID, I guess.
Oh, God.
Well,
Different
don't,
rules.
but please don't put
Say
that
that
out.
Different rules apply in
Yeah.
an emergency. Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing, and completely unrelated to all of that, was because I guess the rules had some stuff in them about public comment, and we had been discussing that in the context of the rules in terms of like what's the process and procedures for that. And then when I was looking back over this, I realized, okay, well, we've already been talking about trying to get to like a communications and engagement plan, right? And so I figured that the public comment rules live there.
Mhm.
They don't live in the kind of council rules and procedures,
Yeah.
which is what made the most sense to me.
Mhm.
All right.
That sounds good. Any more on this topic or anything else to do with rules of council? I think this is our last major topic we've covered,
I think that's
For
right.
this?
Yeah.
and we're kind of ready to, we'll get some of those questions answered.
Yeah.
And then we
Got a
move
recommendation.
toward having a final draft of some kind. All right, sounds good. Review of ongoing projects.
This was just an agenda placeholder for any major projects that are going on. 80 Windsor Avenue, the roof reinforcement project is still underway. If you really want to get into the weeds, you can look at the project update that's included in the meeting packet for tonight's meeting. But we are still on track for a mid-June completion date for that.
Public comment? Yeah, for real?
Yeah. I mean,
Go ahead. Yes,
Some
Ira.
insider knowledge, but I was told that you could still have the committee meeting. You just couldn't vote. You
Right,
couldn't take any
It becomes
action.
an information.
right.
Right?
But like,
That's what I
you
was.
don't, like, when's the last time you voted on something?
Just a couple
Couple minutes ago?
Okay, well, so you couldn't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the question is whether you could if it's only a recommendation as opposed to binding. That's what we want to ask Welcome.
Yeah, I'm not.
Anyway,
I'm
You
not-
didn't state
I'm
your
not
name.
one that I-
Yeah,
I
name and
don't-
address.
you didn't put your name and address on the record, Mr. Winston.
Anybody online?
Nobody.
With the public? No, okay.
Cool.
That closes public comment. Move to adjourn, anybody?
So moved.
I'll second.
Vote to adjourn. None against, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
How's
How's that, 6:37?